Hey everybody, and welcome back to section 4, using retopology on your model. So we're more than halfway through the course and super excited to crack open this egg of what is retopology and why is it important. And you may have heard of retopology, you may already know what it is, sort of, and why it's used, but we're going to hit on some of these examples and sort of the main reasons behind it and what the purpose is. So let's go ahead and kind of dive right in. If you see on your screen here, it has a retopologized face of a character that somebody created. And a lot of times, like we were learning with our sculpting in the prior day 3, that people will sculpt a character or object and they may just be making it as an artist kind of straight from their imagination. Maybe they'll use the dynamic topology sculpt mode, and that just kind of adds polygons and mesh to your sculpt. And by the end, you could have a character with millions of vertices and millions of polygons. And sometimes those polygons aren't going to match up on the left and right side of the face exactly. And also, having that many polygons is really going to bog down any type of rendering that you do with that character. If you wanted to animate that character, if you wanted to put that character in a game, especially in a game, it would not work. You really need something with low poly. So they call it low poly, high poly. The high poly would be the high resolution sculpted character. The low poly is this guy that we're looking at right here on the screen. You can see it's organized, it's neatly spread out. The left side is pretty much the same to the right side, and somebody has gone and retopologized this character because maybe when they sculpted it, it was like millions of tries and polygons. And so you can see how they've colored the layer on here. I got this on wiki.polygon.com, and it's a free place you can just type in retopology examples, and this is kind of how people recreate a face. At least they have these lines around the mouth that kind of are the same on either side, same around the eyes. And what happens a lot of times, if you have a lot of different polygons and you try to animate a character, make the eyes blink or the mouth move, if you're not retopologized and you have just thousands of polygons that are just kind of everywhere in your sculpt, then it's gonna kind of pull and tug at different polygons and make it kind of have an issue with the animation, and it's gonna look like it's pulling and stretching when you color your character. And this, if you do it nice and uniform like this picture, it makes it to where it's evenly stretched and pulled with the colors, and it just looks better when it's animated. So high poly resolution is definitely needed. Don't get me wrong, you wouldn't want to you could just create a character like this straight from the get-go, but you would have a really hard time making this exactly how you want it to look. Usually you do it the opposite, where you have the high res character and then you retopologize over it so it gets the nice form of a high res character. It looks nice like a sculpted character, and then but you also have the lower polygon count and they're also uniform. And so it's the best of both worlds at this point, because an artist, you will just kind of just go crazy and make as many tries and polygons as it takes to get the shape you want, but that doesn't always work in the different aspects that you want to use it for, like we just talked about, animating, gaming, etc. So you have to have it uniform, and it's got to work with the program as well, and that's where retopology comes into place. So let's jump into Blender. Let me show you. There's different ways to retopologize. Especially if you get creative, you can come up with your own ways to retopologize. It's really just putting a lower polygon mesh over top your high resolution object. And I'm going to show you one way that you could do it to make it work simply on a character and pretty much any avenue that you want to take. And then there's another form that I haven't seen anybody really use. I wouldn't want to say that I've invented it, because I'm sure somebody else may have come across the same idea, but I'm going to show you a quick kind of route that I like to take when possible to do a quick retopology. And so let's get right into Blender and we'll do that. Alright, so we have our high resolution sword here. You can see we have almost 230,000 verts, 230,000 faces, 450,000 tries just about, so it's pretty high resolution. Not to say that would break the bank on any program really. With the way computers are nowadays, this might be able to be rendered pretty well in a program. It's just when you get way up close, you can see that there's so many different polygons and vertices and mesh that if you were to color this sword and it were to have to animate in any way, let's say you wanted to make this a sword that's alive and it kind of walks around and these are its arms and this is its head and this is its like feet and it just kind of hops around. Let's say you wanted to do that. You would color this object and texture it, and then during that animation, as this character moves and bends, there's just so many polygons here that there'd be a lot of stretching and it would look not very good as far as a render in any program when you're trying to animate this object. So that's where people have come up with Retopologize, because you can put a low poly mesh over top of this and still get the same form, the same good look, but it's low polygon count. So I'm going to show you how to set up one way for retopologizing that I think works very well, especially if you're trying to retopologize a whole entire character like a person with legs and arms and they're kind of big. And I feel like this is a good setup for any of that method. And so I'm going to show you that right now, and let's start setting that up. So the best way to kind of retopologize is to create a plane. So let's left click and get our 3D cursor here sort of in the middle. Probably put it down here to start. Let's create a plane over here on the left. You can create this plane. And now we have this plane. Let's press G for grab. And on the y-axis, I'm just going to pull it out. We can also rotate it on the press R for rotate. On the x-axis, press X, and then 90 degrees, type 90. And now we have a plane that's directly in front. So now we kind of have this plane that we can scale, we can grab, move around, you can rotate it, and you can manipulate it, basically. And what we want to do now is we want to enable snapping. I haven't showed you what this is yet, but it makes it to where one object or whatever, like this plane that we have, if I get it close enough to the sword, it'll snap to the closest, and we'll select here closest face. And also I'm going to click this project individual elements on the surface of other objects, and that way you can see it clearly. And so now this will snap to faces that are close. And now we have this at a 90-degree angle. Let's add a couple modifiers now. Definitely the mirror modifier if you were on a character, because you would want to only have to do everything once, and you want it to be exactly the same on the other side of the character. So mirror modifier is definitely a need. You would enable clipping so that if you were to, let's move this closer to the sword, and let's go ahead and scale this down, and now it's starting to do its grab here. I mean, it's clipping to the face. And let's move it the x-axis a little bit. And so now that we're in edit mode here, we need to be in edit mode. We can see that when we add this mirror modifier and we add clipping, that if we were to press G and grab this, it's going to mirror to the other side, and it's also going to merge in the middle, the part there in the middle you can see. So it's not, if we didn't have clipping enabled, you would move this, it would mirror it, but it wouldn't keep the pieces together. So we'll go ahead and keep clipping on. And now that we have that enabled, now we can add a Subsurf modifier, Subdivision surface, and we want to have this at one subdivision, and let's make sure that it's not rounded. We don't want it rounded. So you can see here how subdividing is going to make it into this round shape. We want to go to simple and to keep the square, but we want the different subdivisions. So now that we're at that, and you can see here that if we were to do the Catmull Clark, it would be a circle, but we want the simple so we can keep the square here. And now that we have that enabled, we can do a shrink wrap modifier now. And I'm going to actually show you my quick way of doing retopology on certain objects with just the shrink wrap modifier in the future here. I'm just showing you how to set up to really be able to do a nice retopology on a full character. So we'll add the shrink wrap modifier, if I could find it. There it is. And we want to make sure that we target the high resolution mesh right here. The blade is 0.000. And we can offset this just a hair, just so it's floating and it's not like right on the sword. And that way it keeps it above the surface. And let's also do it to where we can see it a little bit better. So if we were to G on the y-axis. Okay, so we want to see this a little bit better as we're doing our retopology. We can click this button here and it adjusts edit cage to modify a result. Shows it just a little bit better. I'm not 100% sure what it does, but I know I can see it just a tad bit better. Let's increase the offset just a little bit so it's above this blade a little bit. The shrink wrap modifier does the same as the snapping, where it projects the object on top of another object. And so, but we want to make sure we keep it above the surface, so we're going to enable that box here so we can easily see it now on the surface as we do our manipulating. Now let's go ahead and add a material to this plane. A material is basically a color. Say new material. We can come over here to the diffuse and make it like a red so it's easily seen. Increase the lightness there. Let's go over to the specular and turn it off. And hardness, yeah, it's okay as long as it's off. I guess the hardness doesn't matter. And now we have our material here on our object, so you can see that we can see it very clearly as opposed to the high resolution mesh. So now that we are ready to go, we can go about creating our mesh on top. So we would go ahead and grab this with G, move it out to the edge of the sword, and it's going to be snapping it to the surface. Then we can make sure we're on edge, that we want to be able to select our edge select, and we'll select the top edge, press E for extrude, move up, make sure we're kind of on the edge there of the blade. And this is kind of, there's a quicker way I think to do this blade than this, but I want to show you this because this would be how you would do a regular character. If you were going to be circling around the eyes and the nose and the mouth and around the body, you're going to want an easy way to do that equally on both sides that you can see, and it'll attach to the surface of your high resolution character. So you would just be extruding out, and let's kind of hurry up and get up to here where you would be getting close to having to move up here. And sometimes you might have to manipulate this just a little bit to bring it out, and you can easily do that with the faces. And since it's been subsurfed just a little bit, you have some faces to play with here. And so we can grab this face. Let's press G for grab, and on the y-axis just kind of pull it out to where it's front of the object there. And that's not what I want it to do. Just like that is what I want it to do. Now we can kind of follow it a little bit. We can move this. And you want to make more subdivisions than I did. I kind of just ran it up there to get to the top to show you, and it'll slide right into that slot. And then you could extrude on the sides here and be making it out like this, making it uniform, and you get the drift. So basically that's how you would start to create your retopology on a character. And you would be doing this simple mesh over top of a high resolution character, and you would be able to then use that low resolution retopology to animate it, to bake textures onto it, and and to bake your normal map, and we'll get to that later on in the course as far as baking those maps. But this is the way you can set up an easy visualization of retopologizing an object. Now, I'm going to Command Z out of these here, and I'm going to show you another method that I think is quick and easy, especially for a sword object like this, to retopologize it. And that's why I had us save our low poly object in that other plane here into our other scene. We can see that we have our low poly sword still there, and we are going to use that to hopefully add a quick retopology.